Hello friends, it's Katie back with another episode of my vlog, and it's Sunday again, which means it's time for the Cinema Club Sunday Roundup. We had a kind of interesting week this week, a little bit of Plague, a little bit of Cyberpunk, a little bit of found footage, traveled to another country. Let's get started. We began the week with the 1995 cyberpunk classic, Johnny Mnemonic, starring Keanu Reeves, directed by Robert Longo. This movie has been sitting at the top of my to-watch list for about 3.5 years now. And someone on Reddit pointed out that the movie actually takes place January 15th to 17th, 2021. So January 17th, I saw that message on Reddit and I went, oh my God, today's the day we have to watch Johnny Mnemonic. So we did. I had not seen the movie since it came out back in 1995. So of course we're talking about a movie that is 25 years old at this point. It's based on a short story by William Gibson. So it is a 80s conceptualization of what the 21st century is going to look like. Aesthetically, visually, it's incredible. The vision of the dystopian cyberpunk future present in this movie is awesome. If you like such cyberpunk classics as The Matrix, you will probably love Johnny Mnemonic, just in terms of the storyline, the visuals, the stylization. Again, it's pretty great. Now, at the same time, it's pretty cheesy. There's some questionable acting in the movie. There's definitely some weird writing, and some awkward things that happen. I don't want to give too much away as usual, but I will tell you that both Ice-T and Henry Rollins have roles in this movie. Ice-T plays the leader of the low-techs, who are low-tech, and Henry Rollins is like a biohacker who's putting implants and various things into other people's bodies. The basic gist of the movie is there is a horrible plague, a disease called nerve attenuation syndrome that people have because of like too much cyber in their lives. And there is a secure method of couriering data from one place to another where you download the data into a courier's brain. They have like a chip installed, and then they physically go from point A to point B and then get the data out of their brain. So Keanu Reeves, Johnny Mnemonic, gets hired to courier this very valuable data from point A to point B. Now, he takes too much data into his brain. He actually has a limitation of 80 gigabytes is all he can hold. He uses like a doubler, but then they put way too much stuff in his brain. And so he is like a ticking time bomb, and he is experiencing something called synaptic seepage, where this data is like getting into his brain instead of just staying housed in the chip. So he has to, he's racing the clock to get the stuff downloaded out of his head before it kills him. Meanwhile, the Yakuza are involved, and they are on a mission to get the data out of his head using any means necessary, including just beheading him and bringing his head back to their people that hired them. So there's a lot going on in this movie, and like I said, a lot of it's done really well. There's some interesting ideas, there's some interesting plot points, but a lot of it is pretty cheesy. There's some early computer animation conceptions of how we could possibly navigate cyberspace that involves a lot of like VR goggles and power gloves, and Keanu Reeves like unfolding various data manipulation things in this sort of cyberspace that is, again, a bad mid-90s computer animated thing. So it's always interesting to watch these movies with the kids because they are so used to what contemporary computer animation looks like. If you go back and watch a movie that's 25, 30 years old that has computer animation in it, they're like, oh, whoa, wow, low poly, amazing. So pretty fun one all the way around. Again, not a great masterpiece or anything, but if you've never seen Johnny Mnemonic and you're into William Gibson, cyberpunk, dystopian futures, anything like that, I would definitely give this one a try. It also is starring long-haired Dolph Lundgren as a psycho street preacher. So maybe I just piqued your curiosity with that. I don't know. But there you have it. Johnny Mnemonic from 1995. The next night after that, we went way back in time and went for The Masque of the Red Death from 1964, directed by Roger Corman, starring Vincent Price. This one is amazing. Have you guys seen this movie? My overall impression of this movie is it is so colorful. It is beautifully shot in like traditional Technicolor, but the scenes are done in such a way. There's this whole series of single color rooms in this palace that this guy is living in. Vincent Price plays this like deliciously nasty rich man. His name is, I think, Prospero, like in The Tempest. And he is the Red Death has come to the town near his castle, and all of the peasants in the town are dying of the Red Death, and they are begging to be allowed into the castle to escape from this horrible plague that's ravaging the countryside. Vincent Price flat out refuses. He kills some of them. He's not interested in saving them at all. He's interested in hosting this like magnificent party at his palace. And so all the rich people are inside the palace, like partying and carrying on and just, being very decadent and enjoying themselves. And all the poor people are outside of the castle dying of the Red Death. Meanwhile, we find out pretty early on that Vincent Price is actually a very active Satanist. And he has his castle constructed in such a way that there's this series of color rooms that you go through. It's like there's a yellow room, and then a white room, and then a blue room, and then a red room, and then a purple room. I can't remember the order, but the last room is the black room, of course, where they're actually doing these satanic rituals. And every time the cast members pass through the series of chambers, one after the other, it's just this awesome feast for the eyes. I love anything that has like restricted colors or sequences of restricted colors, even better. I always love it when they do that in a movie, and in this particular movie, it's done incredibly well. But color just overall is used extremely well in this film. It is the 7th out of, I believe, 8 Edgar Allan Poe interpretations that were directed by Roger Corman. They're all decently good, but I think the best 2 are House of Usher and Masque of the Red Death. So give this one a try if you are a Vincent Price fan, if you are a Roger Corman fan, if you are an Edgar Allan Poe fan, or, like I've been gushing about, if you are a fan of extremely amazing camera work and use of color in a film. I was just stunned at how good the colors were in this movie. And it's not the only thing. Obviously, there's a whole lot of other stuff going on, but man, they did such a great job with the color stuff in this movie. I just loved it. So check that one out if you're into anything I just talked about. The next night after that, I was so inspired by having watched Johnny Mnemonic just a few nights before, we decided to watch Ghost in the Shell. I am talking about the 1995 anime, not the live action remake, though we did see the live action remake when it came out, and both Sean and I, we didn't think it was like great or anything, but it wasn't like, oh God, this horrible remake, they ruined it. So maybe you might want to check that one out also, but that's not what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about the 1995 anime. This is, of course, based on the original cyberpunk manga by Masamune Shirow. They do, of course, make some changes between the manga and the anime, like they always do when interpreting a book into a movie. The main difference for me is what the central character looks like, whose name I am blanking out on. I apologize. She is a cop, but she's also a robot. The concept of the ghost in the shell is your ghost is your spirit and your shell is the container, right? So this is another cyberpunk dystopian future type of story that deals with a lot of themes around what is the self. You have downloadable consciousness. You have artificial consciousness, which can be put into a robot body. You have human consciousness, which can be put into a robot body. You have human consciousness, which can be downloaded into a computer. So there's a lot of different ways of existing, if you will, in this story. The basic gist of the story is there is a rogue AI called the Puppet Master, and our heroes, who are the cops, are trying to track him down. When they finally meet up with him, he basically makes an offer to the female cop, who, again, she's a cyborg, right? She's mostly robot. And he wants to basically merge with her to create a whole new entity, if you will. I don't want to say too much about what happens with that and where they wind up ending it up. But this is a very, very cool piece of animation from the mid-90s. They did a kind of interesting mix of traditional cell animation and computer animation here. In this movie's case, it wins with the computer animation because it's not trying to replicate reality like in the form of a special effect in a live action movie. Instead, it's used as a way of enhancing the animation in a cell animated movie. And for the most part, they do a really good job with it. It doesn't feel like awkward or inserted in a weird way. It's a great story. The storytelling itself gets a little murky with the details. I had read the manga before I saw the anime, and so I knew the whole story already. And I think if you are coming to it without having read the manga, it might be a little bit more difficult to get into it. The kids had questions that I had to answer on the fly during the movie because there was some stuff that was not as clear as it could have been. But overall, this is a great movie. I would give it 9 out of 10. And it's super, super influential. So lots of directors were influenced by watching Ghost in the Shell in the mid-90s, including the Wachowskis. When they went and made The Matrix, apparently they're on record as having said they saw Ghost in the Shell. They looked at this piece of animation and said, oh my God, what if we could make that but like live action instead? And they lifted a bunch of ideas from Ghost in the Shell, which turn up in The Matrix. So if you're a Matrix fan, if you're familiar with those films, or I should say that film, because really only the first one is worth watching, and you watch Ghost in the Shell, you will see a lot of references that The Matrix picked up from Ghost in the Shell. Most obviously, the cyborgs have ports in the back of their necks, which is how they jack into things, which is obviously how people are hooked into The Matrix. So apparently also James Cameron was inspired by Ghost in the Shell, and that's why he decided to make Avatar, which, Avatar, but okay, Ghost in the Shell was inspirational for him. So, and there's a bunch of other directors who've gone on record saying that Ghost in the Shell was incredibly influential for them. So I'd say right in hand with my recommendation for Johnny Mnemonic. If you like cyberpunk, if you like dystopian future stuff, if you like science fiction from the mid-90s, definitely check out Ghost in the Shell. If you watch Ghost in the Shell and you enjoy the anime and you're looking for more, I would definitely read the manga. It's really, really good. I think the manga is better than the anime, but this is a place where we're reviewing movies, not talking about books. But I'm going to say go ahead and consume both of those, because watching the anime and reading the manga are only going to increase your enjoyment of both. I think they add together. They don't kind of fight with each other like some things do when they get interpreted. So, and like I said at the beginning, the live action remake isn't bad either. So if you find yourself sucked into this world and wanting more, there's that also. All right. Speaking of wanting more, I had talked a few weeks ago about VHS, the found footage anthology movie. Well, my little horror head Henry picked VHS 2 for his pick this week. It is, of course, the sequel to the first one. Similar to the first one, there is kind of an overarching setup for the whole thing that involves some young people who are videographers. I think they might be like private investigators also. They're going into a house. They're looking for a young man who has gone missing. And as soon as they get into the house, they wind up again in one of these rooms where there's just a bunch of TVs with VCRs hooked up to them and a bunch of VHS tapes kind of piled up. And one of the characters goes off searching the house for this missing young man. The other character stays in the room to watch what's on these videos to see if she can figure out the mystery by watching the videos. And then, of course, by watching the videos, we, the audience, get to see the other short films that together make up VHS 2. So again, because it's an anthology, it's kind of all over the place. Some of the pieces are stronger than others. I feel like on whole, this one is better than the first one. You've got, let's see, there's a story about like a guy who gets like a cybernetic eye and it goes all sorts of wrong for him. There is a really cool, my favorite piece in this movie is a story about a, let's call it a bike ride of doom that goes horrendously wrong. But the whole story is told from the point of view of the guy's helmet cam, like a GoPro that's mounted on top of his head. And the point of view narration works really, really well in that one. There's also a very scary bit about like a team of people who go to interview some cultists that are living in, man, I want to say Indonesia, but I might be wrong about that. That one's very, very scary. I was actually scared by that one. And then there's one that's like a slumber party alien abduction one, which it's a little weaker, but it's still fun. And then we come back in between each of these stories and pick up with the people who are in the house watching the tapes. And of course, their whole plot that they're involved in is moving along in between these other short stories that we're watching. So again, not going to go into how this movie ends, but if you like anthology, if you like short films, if you like horror anthology in particular, if you like the found footage genre, if you watched VHS 1 and somehow didn't ever see the second one, here's your movie. I think you will enjoy VHS 2. So check that one out. And then last night, the last movie of this week, I decided to show the kids Slumdog Millionaire. That's another one that's been on the list for a long time, but we just hadn't got to for whatever reason, and we finally cracked that one last night. This is another one that I hadn't seen since it came out, 2008, by the way, directed by Danny Boyle. This is the story of a young man who grows up in the slums of Mumbai in India, and he winds up going on the Indian version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And he has all the answers to all the questions. And they immediately suspect him of cheating at the game. And so he gets interrogated by the police about how he was able to cheat to win this game show. And then the whole narrative of the story unfolds while he is telling flashbacks and these little vignettes and stories from his life, which explain why he knows that it's Benjamin Franklin on $100 bill, or why he knows the name of the actor who starred in such and such a movie, or why he knows the name of the poet who wrote this or that famous Indian poem. It's a very sweet movie. It's very heartwarming. And mostly it's this really cool look at what it might be like to grow up in the slums of Mumbai, which is unbelievable looking. Side note, we really enjoyed the documentary TV series Trashopolis earlier this year. And one of the episodes of Trashopolis takes place in Mumbai in the actual giant dump that these kids were living in Slumdog Millionaire. So if you've seen Slumdog Millionaire and you were intrigued by this kind of life that they had and you want to see more about that, I recommend that you look up Trashopolis, the Mumbai episode. It'll give you a lot more there. So this movie is great. It's got a great use of color, great use of music. Again, the flashback life vignette storytelling is a really, really cool narrative device, and it's a really great way to unfold the story. The other thing that's just incredible about this movie is the actors. All of them are great, but in particular, the child actors in this movie are awesome. They completely sold me on the whole thing. As you see Jamal and Salim and Latika grow up over the course of the movie, they're replaced by other actors, of course, but all of the kids do an incredible job. The adults as well, but it's a harder bar, I think, for a kid to hit that mark of like really, really great acting. So I really appreciate it when I see it. It's also got this cool mix of it's in English and Hindi kind of mixed together. And it flows pretty seamlessly between the two languages, which I imagine is what living in India is like, but I've never lived in India, so I don't know. I would love to visit sometime, but I've never been there. But it's very cool the way it's presented in the movie and the way the movie is kind of bilingual, if you will. So, Slumdog Millionaire won Academy Award for Best Picture, right? I think it won like 8 awards or something. It's a very, very awarded film. So if for some reason you missed that one and never saw it, definitely recommend it. It's I feel like it's got something for everyone. I would recommend that one across the board for people. So yeah, there's Slumdog Millionaire, and that wraps up our entire week of movie viewing. I don't know what we have coming up in this next week. We've definitely strayed away from that concept of musical Mondays. I don't even know what happened to that one, but we should get a list going or something. I don't know. You guys tell me, what have you been watching? I'm always curious to find out what your watch list has been for this last week, or if you have any movies to recommend to me, if you got anything you think the kids might really enjoy, give me a comment down below. I would love to hear about it. I will be back in a couple more days with another episode of my vlog. Until then, everybody stay safe and take care out there. And thanks so much for watching.